All right. Peace and blessings, family. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Sunday Sip with Sisters. And I am so excited to be joined by some awesome sisters this morning. And introduce yourselves before Dadisi gets in, because she's at the reboot her computer. So, introduce yourself.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Tia Williams. I am from Southern California, currently based in Los Angeles, co-founder of West to West Movement, an international platform that facilitates an exchange and sharing of resources, education, and culture across the African diaspora within our local communities here in the States. And I'm grateful for Mama Ro and everybody on the call for making space for us to share and get into some good ideas and topics today.
Okay. My name is Aba Gerri Scott, and I'm here in Sacramento. And right now I am an educator at Sacramento City College, soon to be retired. But I lead homecoming pilgrimages to Ghana, and I've been doing that for 20 years.
Wow. And Dadisi, thank you for joining us. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are. Your sound? Yeah, I can't hear you at all. So while she's figuring out her sound, so when you all were growing up, and we'll get Dadisi to jump in so she'll figure it out because it's her sound. You may have to restart again, and when you come in through the Zoom yard, check your audio and your visual because it'll allow you to do that.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was muted somehow.
Okay.
Good morning. First of all, I want to say good morning to all you beautiful ladies. Thank you, our lovely hostess, Sister Rolanda. I'm so honored to be a guest on your program this morning. And my name's Dadisi. And what was the question? My journey to Africa, or just a little bit about myself?
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from San Francisco. I'm a mother. I'm a sister, daughter. I work primarily in public relations for the city government, and I have been a daughter of Africa my whole life. I've known that since I was a wee little one. My mother named me Dadisi Malika Tamu, and we all have, my sisters and brothers, we all have African names. You know, the 70s, we all got those names, and so there's always been a kinship and knowledge of who we are since I was a baby. And my journey, I finally made it there in 2018. I've been back 3 times since then. So we'll talk about that later.
Oh, good. So major question is, when you all were growing up, what was it like, your experience in America? Growing up, Black women, Black girls, what was that like for you all?
So I will quote, I have a cousin, actually a great auntie on my father's side, and she recently shared a story of her recollection growing up at one of our family reunions. And if there's space where I can go into like the history of our family, but she mentioned, or she shared, that growing up she didn't have to interact with white people. Like that was not her reality. And they grew up in South Carolina near Myrtle Beach. She said that was not her reality. They had their own school, they had their own farm. The proceeds and the profit from the farm paid for the school. So she would tell stories of our great grandfather who would sit on the back porch with a shotgun daring anybody to pass by through to his property. And so when I think about that story, and it shed so much light, her experience on my experience growing up here in America, because I was insulated by my family and by my village. I definitely had worldly experiences, but they never in my mind, I can't consider them to be like traumatic experience that I ever, had to go through, because my family was so much of my safeguard with everything. If we went through something, it was in our household. So that's really a part of my identity of being young, going to family reunions, learning about, our ancestry back into the 1800s, having genealogists and different researchers in the family who their whole careers, they went into these different fields in their life for the sake of being able to bring it back home to their family. On my mother's side, very similar. I had a great grandmother who was a beautician. She was an educator. She used her home as collateral and as a resource for her family to start businesses, to bail people out of stuff. And so we, on both sides, we were surrounded by, I was surrounded by women. So I would say having a matriarchal family structure is a part of my experience of being around strong women who held down everything from raising children to starting businesses to creating institutions to teaching. So it definitely informed and has informed who I am as a woman now, being surrounded by those examples and those pillars and really those like queens, warriors, soldiers, all of those things.
Right on. Anybody else?
I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if you know anything about Cincinnati, it's right across the bridge from Kentucky. So it's the Mason-Dixon line. That's where people went to get free. They had to cross over the Ohio River. And so I say that to say Cincinnati, for me growing up, it was a very segregated place. You had clear Black communities and white communities. I remember when we moved to a community that was probably 60% white in a place called College Hill that I would say probably within a year, it was all Black. So there was this practice called block busting where people would just direct Black folk to the same community. But it was fine for me growing up in a Black community because we had extended family, people who watched out for you. So I ended up feeling safe. Now, having said that, I was born in 57. So I remember the 60s very well. It was a turbulent time. And even though I was a little girl, I knew there was something that had to do with skin color. Even though I couldn't understand it or articulate it, I just knew, what is this thing about color? So I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated. I remember my mother crying. I remember going to school and the Black staff there crying. I remember the riots and tanks rolling up and down our streets. And my mother told me that my heartbeat was so loud that she had to come and get me and lay me next to her because there was so much chaos with the riots and gun shooting and things like that. And so I think that time period kind of informed who I grew up to be, because I was kind of, even though as a child, in the middle of that era and understood that there was this thing called race and my Black skin and how that impacted me was going to definitely impact my life.
What about you, Dadisi?
Well, I was born in 71. I grew up in the Fillmore in San Francisco, which at that time was a predominantly Black community, but San Francisco was very diverse. And my mom exposed us to a lot of different cultures. So, we spent time in Japantown. We spent time in, other neighborhoods. And when she was able, there were 4 of us. She was a single mom, educator. Just a little bit about my background. I'm a little bit roots and I'm a little bit bougie, I think. So people describe it that way. And I think I got that because my grandparents were both college educated. They came from Louisiana and Mississippi to Los Angeles, respectively, with master's degrees in education. They worked very hard. and provided a really good middle class lifestyle for my mom and her uncle. They bought a home in Hancock Park in Los Angeles. If you know, it's a very, their neighbors were Ray Charles and them, and other musicians and entertainers at that time. And so my mom had a very, very nice upbringing, and I think because of that, she felt she didn't have that connection really to the South, and my grandparents were trying to better themselves, and so I think she yearned for that connection to Africa, which drew her to San Francisco. And she was kind of like the rebellious, hippie, Black conscious, Afro wearing, running around with, Angela Davis and them, wayward child, so to speak. And so I think because of that, she wanted to instill in us the knowledge of self. I was also, even though we lived across the street from the projects, I had ballet lessons, I had music lessons. She made sure that we were really well-rounded in terms of like arts and culture and all those things that my granny taught her, but she also wanted us to have the knowledge of self and the love for Africa, and just being ourselves, knowing who we are and whatnot. So that's where I am. So I'm a little mix of both worlds. And I think, and for me in school, I was always like the only one in the class, and on jobs, pretty much the only one or one of, 2, 3, or 4 Black students, and from like grade school on up. So
Wow.
in my experience.
So with that being said, a little bit of your background, the interesting thing about this call, we have, Tia, what year were you born?
I was born in 1995.
We got a 95, we got a 71, and we have a 57. That, to me, that's a good time span.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I was thinking was, if you had to look back at your teenage years, how would you describe your teenage years when you, in reference to Africa as a teenager? Was it a part of it? Was it like, didn't really think about Africa, but I remember my teenage years, it was 85 or thereabouts. The Black medallions wearing around your neck, that was out. We're talking 88, we're talking, even though we had Word to the Mother and all of that, it never crossed my mind to go to Africa in that moment, though I was studying about, I want to know more about the greatness of the Black people here. That's in that moment for me. But when you look at your teenage years, what was your teenage years like?
For me, it was definitely focused on everything that was happening right in front of me at that time. I wasn't thinking world scale, though I knew my potential, but I also knew like I just got to get through the times. So for context, my siblings were born in the 80s, 70s, 80s, raised in the 90s. My mom left Los Angeles in the 90s because of all the things that was happening with the school systems, with police brutality, and she came to Moreno Valley, the Inland Empire. Actually, a wave of my family and amongst other, several other Black folks who went to the IE as well, essentially fleeing, domestic terrorism of some sort. You're scared to show, your son or your child is not going to make it home. And I grew up with them, like right next to them, going through all of the craziness that they was going to. And of course, though this space, Moreno Valley, is definitely more suburban-ish, you still have the same mentality that's being brought from LA. So you have the same things. I remember there being like our versions, or early 2000s versions of race riots at the school between Black and Latino students over the same, little scraps and resources left to us. I was very much involved in church. That was a requirement by my mom, and the church was a resource. So out here in the IE, there weren't as many, and there still aren't as many like extracurricular activities and organizations that support youth in general, but especially Black youth. So it's not much to get in. It's not much to do here, So you're growing up in your adolescent times, you're getting into all sort of stuff. So the church was where we went. They provided me scholarships. They gave me my first laptop to go to college. That was your local community organization. So that and my studies, I was into other things, dance, play softball, but my studies was was where I was focused at. Within our family, we had different changes. My mom going through her experiences as a woman, transitioning out of marriages or out of a marriage, losing our grandmother. So I responsibility, and I would say like almost adulthood kind of hit me about 15, 16. And though, my mom definitely provided like a means of shelter in terms of what the next steps in my life, that was something that I just had to figure out. So that was what I was focused on, getting into college. My grandmother, who was an educator, she passed, so I had to get that together for myself. And what am I going to do to get out of here? Because I knew that I wanted to leave Moreno Valley and never come back. And I wanted to go the furthest away. So it was very much, my focus was like in the here and now, like in the very present. It wasn't until I made that step and got into college that I started thinking of, okay, now I'm in a stable space. I know I'm gonna be here for at least 4 years, because we had moved around so much as a child. I can think about what I'm going to do next.
Right on. Before we get to the next person, Professor Gerri.
Yes.
Is it Geraldine? Am I saying your name right? That's what the person wrote down here.
First of all, no one calls me Geraldine.
Okay.
They're trying to clown me.
Yeah. I took a course in college. So this is somebody on the comments. Somebody said I took her class.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Use that. I didn't have to say that comment. I thought that was something.
I remember growing up, I was just militant. My mother always told me I was a willful child. So I was a little on the militant side. I remember being 13 in a history class, and this teacher was talking about Angela Davis like a dog, and I defended her, and he put me out his class and called me a communist. And put me out his class, sent me to the office. So my dad had to come up there and get them straight. But that I didn't know a whole lot about Angela Davis. But, it's like, you're not going to talk about her. I saw her as a freedom fighter, even in Cincinnati. So I just remember Muhammad Ali. I was so in love with him, and I had a life-size poster of him in my bedroom that I shared with my sister. So, we all know what he stood for. So I was just all into that. But other than that, typical junior high school years, just navigating life as a teenager, trying to date and have friends and all that kind of stuff, in the midst of this, of me being on the militant side. So the continent of Africa at that time was not in the forefront of my mind, but I was very connected to my Blackness, and for us to be free in these United States of America.
Right on. What about you, Dadisi? Teenage years. Oh, something's going on. So she'll just jump back in. So with that being said, what was your first introduction to Africa? And did you know you were from Africa? Did you know that when you were a descendant of that place? Did you know that at all? What was your first introduction into that?
You want to go first? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can. There was a little order, so I don't mean to keep talking first.
Yeah.
I just
going
in order. But for me, it was, I would say, ground zero. And it started of looking just at the decorations in a family house. We had, before I knew what an altar was by name, we had altars in our home. Everywhere you went, there was a space in the house where it was sacred. You couldn't go with your shoes on. And, there were pictures of everybody. There were like masks. I have an auntie, and she's here right now, but I can remember going to her house, and she had the most Afrocentric house I had ever seen. And she's always been that way since we were younger. She, her and my aunties and uncles, they grew up like in the 70s, but you could tell for her, they were into the aesthetic of Blackness and Africanness. My uncle, he was a DJ, and so you could hear it in the sound. My dad is a drummer, so I heard it through music, and asking questions of where does the sound come from. I was raised on like Parliament, P-Funk, Bootsy Collins, and the like. So it came from me through the aesthetic, through within culture. You know, there's these different elements. The aesthetic was the one that I could identify wherever I was at. My dad stayed in LA, and on every other weekend I had to go visit my dad. I say had to because growing up, you know, tumultuous relationships and, you know, family dynamics. But every time I went, my dad made it a point to give me some sort of history lesson. So I had to watch documentaries like, you know, on Angela Davis, Watt Stacks. I had to watch all of these things. And I was definitely interested. The only thing I rebelled against at the time was the fact you're forcing me to sit here and watch it when I could be doing other things. But I remembered everything from it. And that was early. And within my family, like I said, I didn't have to look outside of my family unit to recognize our ancestry from the pictures, you know, and asking, okay, these people came, you know, we know our history, or we know within our family our kinship and our ancestry into like the 1800s. Well, where were they at before then? And that's where all the, well, you know, it said that they was from here, but then we also have, you know, American indigenous blood. And so all of those questions were answered for me and were in my mind probably within the first 7 years of my life. I seen it, I knew it, and it wasn't something that I would say, because I knew it early, I didn't go through like searching for it. Like I knew it from within my family unit, and going to college and having like the world perspective, you know, exposed to me was like, okay, Africa is this tangible place now. People go there, there's civilizations. I can actually now go and I can experience and explore this for myself because I know that it's in me, because it's been instilled in me since a child.
Wow, wow. Dadisi, I know you just jumped back on, and the question was, well, we on to the question, but for you in your teenage years, what was your teenage years like? Before we get to the next question, is maybe you could just flow into that. When did you first discover Africa, like itself? Like when you became aware of it?
My teenage years, to hear the sister talk about, being so focused and knowing as a teenager what she was going to do and go to college and stuff like that. I was like all over the place. I had a lot of different interests. I hated school. School wasn't for me. I loved learning, but I didn't like, the structure of high school. From as early as I can remember, I wanted to work, be on my own, be a woman, take care of myself. And so in high school, I was going through the motions of going through high school, but I wasn't in high school. I ended up testing out in the 11th grade and going to community college and working. And during the 80s, I have two aunties, my mom's best friends. They're like my godmothers, but I call them aunties. They're twins, and my mom is like the third twin. They started traveling to Africa in the early 80s, and to Ghana and Senegal primarily. And they both got husbands. And so my Uncle Yande was from Senegal, and I had Uncle Emmanuel from Ghana. And so my aunties were like grand madames. They would be coming back at the family cookouts. They'd be having African food, and their husbands would be there. And we all always had like African, artwork and artifacts and stuff in our home, but they was bringing back the real authentic stuff, the instruments and everything. And so, in the clothes and the stories. And so that was kind of like my first introduction really into the culture, because at my auntie's parties, we would get the food, and I'm all about food. So we'd have the food, we'd have the music, we'd have the clothing and the style. And then in college, I met some African students. And so, during this, so this is like 88. So it was like Public Enemy, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, everything was like black. And so, on the campus, I was trying to be with the Nigerians. And so that's a whole nother story. But I was with our sisters and brothers, and I just love the culture. Like, I was like, dang, these are my people. Like, these are my people. So that's kind of how that got started. My journey to Africa, but I didn't go I knew I wanted to go. I didn't know when it was going to happen. I always thought it was like way, 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 way down the line, you know. Yeah. It didn't happen till last year, but yeah.
All right, at least it happened. Look here. At least it happened. That's what I always say. What about you, Aba Gerri Scott?
I would say just really going to college. I went to community college first. I went to University of Cincinnati, and I had a couple of classes that started just really talking about the continent of Africa. And then when I moved to California, I went to a community college on the peninsula and met a sister from Nigeria, and we became friends. And so we would always go to a group of us. We would always go to her house. Her mother would cook Nigerian food, which I loved. And that was kind of my introduction, just the food and just hanging out with them. But I think my real kind of deep understanding came from San Francisco State once I transferred there. And I was double majored. So as a Black Studies major in the School of Ethnic Studies in the Black Studies department, there I was exposed to a lot of information. And San Francisco State has its own history about the boycotting and becoming the first college to have a ethnic studies program, right? So so I got exposed to a lot of stuff and a lot of information that kind of rocked my world, things I never knew about, like, you mean Jesus is Black? Oh, you know, or information like Black people are the first people on the planet. What? Black people are the first, you know, stuff that you never learned before. At least I did not, had not known things like that. So I just really got deeply involved in study and scholarship as a student, as an undergraduate student, and had some of the best Black scholars on the planet that who taught me and that I was exposed to.
So when you all decided to go to Africa, how did you feel? Like how did you feel like, oh my God, I'm going to the birthplace of the original people, of the first people. Like I'm going, and then and it's a place that some of my ancestors were forced to be taken and thought they would never see again. And here you are preparing to go to Africa. How did you feel? You can go back to that feeling.
I just felt like it's about time. It was my first trip. I went with a sister friend of mine, a Nigerian Yoruba sister, Moke. We were planning to go at Christmas 2018, and in October, I kept kind of asking her like, hey, what do I need to start doing? I got my passport. I need to get my visa. She was like, don't worry about the visa. I'm going to take care of that. So we had like this prayer study group at work. And every Thursday, and she said, hey, she was like, I got to go to Nigeria in 3 weeks for like a funeral, basically. And she said, so I'm thinking, she said, it's so close to Christmas. If I go now, this was October. She was like, if I go now, I don't think I'm going to make it back in December. She was like, can you roll with me now? I was like, hell yeah, I can roll. Let's go. So like, I literally had like maybe 2 weeks notice to plan, and everything just fell in place. And I went and I stayed my first trip. I think I was there almost 2 weeks, like 12 days or something like that. But everything just happened so fast, but it was like right on time because I wasn't bugged out about it. I was like, this is how it's supposed to be. It's going to be a blessed trip. I'm just going with the flow. I don't know what to expect. I had, I'd never been there before. I felt like I knew enough about the culture though. Like I was going to be okay because I love everything, like food, music. I knew all the Afrobeat artists. I know the dances. I was like, yeah, I'm going home. So I was pumped. There was a lot of things I wasn't prepared for. We probably go talk about that later. But I mean, I've been to third world countries before, so that wasn't shocking, but it was some other things. But I had a wonderful time. It was a blessed trip. I made so many links. When I got there, I just felt like, wow, I'm here. Like finally, like I'm finally here. Yeah.
Anybody else? Your first trip, how did you feel? How did you feel?
My first trip was 23 years ago.
Wow.
And I went with a professor of mine from San Francisco State, Dr. Wade Nobles, and then Dr. Naeem Akbar is out of Florida, and they started these trips to Ghana. And so I went with them, I think their second year, when I found out they were doing them, and I told my sister, oh, we gotta go. And we don't know how we're gonna get the money together, but we're going. You know, when you make up your mind,
yep,
you will get the money.
Like a made up mind.
Yes. And it was about 20 of us on that trip. And I remember landing. This is when Ghana Airways was still operational, because that's the airlines we went on. And I just remember just being so happy and so joyous, and feeling immediately at home.
What about you, Tia? Oh, can't hear you, Tia.
I'm sorry.
Okay, there you go.
I was sitting in one of my classes in college. I went to University of California, Davis, and it was my second year, and I was just tuned out. I knew when I went into college, okay, I'm just going through this because I need a certificate. The learning, I knew, self-study, self-knowledge was priority. So I was really going through the motions with that particular day. I was like, oh, I got to leave this school. And I don't know where I want to go, but I need to leave. Didn't want to transfer. So I started looking up study abroad programs, ended up deciding on Ghana. And from there went and I lived and studied in Ghana for a year. I think because I hadn't yet gotten into that place of romanticizing the continent. I don't think I ever experienced that for myself, because it was just like, okay, next step of action, I want to study abroad. I'm not going to a European country. I'm not going to a non-African country. Here's my opportunity to go. Just take it. And so even in going and experiencing it, it was like, okay, yes, I'm in a new place. But again, going back to, for me, my foundational knowledge of self was already knowing what my connection was. So when I was able to go and spend that year of study, my relationships and just my ideas developed in that order of like, okay, I know I've been African. I'm not African just because I made it to the continent for the first time. And it's that Kwame Ture saying of, we're not African because we're born in Africa. We're African because Africa is born in me. And that held to be true because I was able to go with this strong sense of Black culture, which is a subculture within the African culture, and not from this place of I had been lacking, self-knowledge, self-worth, self-identity, or not speaking from this place of cultural deprivation. No, I know what my culture is and I can identify with markers. And so going to Africa I went to Ghana for the first time. It gave me a wider lens of like being able to see where does, our history within being descendants, some descendants of enslaved people, some descendants of indigenous people, who had been mixed with African people from before European colonization. What does it mean to just be here in this space and time and develop beautiful relationships? I got a chance to intern with women, phenomenal women like Rose Walls, who she is the director of our study abroad program based in Ghana, repatriated from the States. Dr. Erica Bennett, she's an ambassador that runs what is essentially a diasporic embassy in Ghana that provides diplomatic services to Black folks. So I was fortunate enough, I was fortunate enough to be connected with them and entrusted in their care my time there, and had revelations, had some conflicts that came from really just came from lack of knowledge, and had those moments where I would butt heads, there being there long enough. You live amongst people where it's like, okay, you think this way because of what? Your knowledge and your information of Black folks from the States, where does it come from? So we had to engage in critical thinking conversations and exercises just to begin to know one another. And that was a part of the experience, you know, and still a part when we go back today. And so after that first time, went back the following year and haven't stopped going back. You know, my third time there, we took a group of 25 people, and that's what we've started doing to make it so, you know, whether you're younger, whether you're more experienced, you go, and it doesn't matter what your affiliation is, where your consciousness is. It's a pilgrimage, you know, to return and see. And what you do with it is what you do with it.
Right on.
Can I just share something real quick? I just had a thought. I remember my first trip, the second leg of the trip from London to Lagos, and the plane was, you know, all African, and it was my first time ever being on a plane where, you know, I wasn't, you know how you get on a plane, you in the airport and you walk on the plane, first thing you do is look for other Black faces, right? And sometimes you see one or two, and sometimes you be the only one on the plane. And so like that experience, like walking onto the plane and everybody in first class was African, and then everybody in the next class was African, and then everybody in the way back was African. And it was just beautiful. And then another experience I remember on that flight was like, y'all know how we love to pray. So, you know, it hit a little turbulence. Everybody was praying, singing. Like, it was like the Fame cafeteria. You probably too young for Fame. You don't know.
I've seen it though. I've seen it.
Okay, but it was just like this unity. And it was just, you know, like old grandmas was singing and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is what's up. Just never experienced that. But anyway, I just wanted to share. It was just, it was a blessed trip. I don't know if y'all ever experienced that, but yeah. I just remember feeling like.
Did everybody clap once the plane landed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they clapped. And then also, I've seen sometimes on long hauls, people get up and like talk to each other. You know, sometimes they're with someone, like their group, and they're getting up and they're talking and they're walking up and down the aisles and socializing. But this was like the first time that like I could say I made friends on the airplane and like exchanged phone numbers with people. And, you know, they followed up and called and, you know, make sure you're okay when you get to Lagos or when you get to wherever you're going, you know, call my cousin. Like people will give you their family's contact details to like make sure you good. Or you going to Ghana, well, here, take so-and-so's number. You know, if you run into any trouble or you know, call them and let them know. I'm gonna let them know in advance that you're coming. So I had never experienced that. So I just wanted to share that with a happy memory.
No. Have y'all ever had in Africa, when you were in Africa, any kind of spiritual experience where, I don't know what your ancestors are? The first trip I went to, a good friend of mine's brother Keon wanted me to take a letter and to bury it somewhere in Africa. He said, just find a place. It was a letter he had wrote to Africa, you know. So no worries. So when we went to the last bath, there are 2 people buried in front of the last bath. So I didn't even know the history of the 2 people. They were explaining stuff. Oh, okay, that's not so big. I put it right here because these two people were from the diaspora and they was buried there. So I went ahead on and buried the letter there, took it. And when I took it back, I guess one of the people there was in Jamaica, and Keon's people are from Jamaica. So I had no idea when I was doing that. Keon was like, "Oh my God!" So he was like, "I haven't made it there yet, but please take just some words from me." Like if some people have just this longing to want to be connected to their African roots, their African ancestors. You know, it rolls with them. That's not everybody's experience, but I just know for me that was an experience for me to be able to touch the soil that my African ancestors. That's all I have is African ancestors. Never returned, but I was returning for them. Have y'all had any experiences like that on your trip?
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned the last. I'm sorry, were you speaking?
No, go ahead.
I'm delayed.
That's okay.
You mentioned the last bath, and I didn't go on my first time, but of all the like awakening or enlightened experiences I've had, that was one of the most profound. We had went probably last summer for the first time, and immediately when we hit the water, first of all, we went in there bombarding the place. This is during the year of return where everything is monetized, everything is about $1, and we like, well, we be damned if we come in here and you monetizing us as well. So when the tour guide thought the tour was over for us, we like, no, we're gonna go to the water for a minute because we know our connection to the water. And we know our right to this land. And I think it's something about being able to walk firm in that. What is your birthright to where it is that you're going? That's a spiritual experience in itself versus as a tourist. And sometimes we can, I think, and it's a personal opinion, of fall into the trap of over romanticizing our motherland, that we forget to walk in our rightful, like not just ownership, but our rightful connections, you know? So we go, and immediately we step foot in the water, and it's about 6 women, and we all find our own corners in silence, and we start bathing in the water, we start crying, we start meditating. And for me, the same as you, Mama Ro, every woman that I had been connected to in my life, even like the women attached to my lovers, like just came out in the water. All their burdens was laid down. My meditations were directly to them, like taking things from my mother's tongues, from my sister's tongues, from my auntie's tongues, and being able to lay it in the water and return it. You know, there was a sister, it was quite a few women on the trip having a lot of womb, like battles with their womb, from miscarriages to like really bad cramps. A lot of stuff was happening with our wombs. And so to go into the water after we just, you know, left from, once again, the dungeons, and experiencing how life begins and ends in our womb. You know, it is the stress. That's where we carry our stress. That's where we carry our intuition. All that whole area is everything. And it can either create life or it can create death. And we see how it can do both. And that was one of those moments of just understanding and recognizing the connection. You know, I didn't have to read a book to know that I'm connected to this place. Couldn't nobody tell me I wasn't, because I know what my spirit, where it naturally, intuitively went, and what it allowed me to do, and to be able to come home and share those stories with women. And I had to make it a point to connect with each of the women whose names I was able to mention, of like, sis, don't trip. Everything that you're carrying has been laid down. It's been returned to the source from which it comes from, because water has no enemies or no friends. So we just return it, we leave it there, and we move on. And so going back to how we carry, you know, we carry for everything. We carry the weight for one another. And some of us are the chosen ones within our tribe or our village to be able to go out and take those journeys. But it is for the sake of our people. We don't do it alone. And that hit me in a different way with that experience.
I felt that when you was talking. Wow. Anybody else? Any kind of spiritual experience while you were there in Africa at all?
I was just thinking, what she said. I'm going to share something else with what she just said about the whole womb thing, which was interesting. So I've been menopausal for a couple of years, and when I don't know, something about being in Africa just make you juicier. Like you just be like juicier. And so this last trip, I was in Kumasi. I wasn't doing no shenanigans. There was no hanky-panky going on or nothing. But I was hanging out in the kingdom of Kumasi, and I was hella irritable and just irrational and wanting to cuss people out and like, what's going on with me? Like, that's just not me. Mm-hmm. And anyway, my cycle started like on this trip, and it's been like since then. So I don't know if Africa brought that out. I don't know if I just been, you know, under depression, or, you know, depressed for the last couple years, or, you know, I had some things going on with me, some traumatic emotional things that were going on, and I don't know if that stopped my cycle. But like everything is fine now. So I don't know what that's all about. But what I want to share, this was the last trip. The first trip, I carried some of my late father's ashes with me to Africa, because I know he always wanted to go and was never able to go. So I, you know, knew that my brothers and sisters and I discussed when I was taking this trip that I would do that for him. And I went to Nigeria first. And I went to the beach, and I didn't feel like that's where I needed to be. So then I carried his ashes with me to Accra. And the first day, as soon as I got off the airplane, before I went to the hotel or anything, I went straight to the beach. And I didn't feel, I don't know if it was just the travel or what it was, but I was feeling kind of lost. And so my cousin was there with me. She lives in Accra part-time, and we just started praying and we just started talking to the ancestors. And so at the time, the water was it low tide? Low tide. So the water was out. So it really wasn't coming up to the shoreline. And so we were standing there and talking, and I was talking about my father, and we were playing music. And I had trouble releasing and letting go. And then the water just like came up. I mean, like came up past us, past our heels, past her. And she said, cuz she was like, she said, you need to let it go now. And so when I did, it was like the water had come up to just say, you know, I'm here. I'm ready to receive, or we're ready to receive, you know, his remains or whatever. And it was just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Aba Gerri Scott?
Ooh. So 2 things. One is on my first trip, I had my own personal experience at the Black and White Shrine. Power Shrine, yes. That just led me on a whole nother spiritual journey. But what strikes me often, particularly in the dungeons and also at the last bath, is, have you all seen the movie Sankofa?
Yes, 1,000 times.
Okay, so you know how the model goes in and then she comes back, right? She goes in the dungeon and she has this experience and she comes back out transformed. So I have seen that happen so many times. It is definitely a spiritual experience. And the very first time I went, there was this sister, she was very reserved, very quiet throughout the whole trip. And when we get to the door no return, she starts screaming. She falls back and she's screaming. I can see it. I can see it. I can see it all. I can see it all. And this is before the movie Sankofa came out. This whole notion, no, maybe not. It wasn't. It wasn't before. But this notion of being almost visited by the ancestors, being kind of possessed by the ancestors in a way that you can see, you have the vision, and you understand the ma'afa and the trauma, the catastrophe that occurred, all the things that happened, and she embodied that. And I've seen that over and over and over again, even though it can manifest in different ways, where people really have possession, visitation. You've seen that. That's really, really powerful. And last February in particular, this one sister, it's almost as if she carried the wailing, the hurt, the pain of everybody and laid it out on the dungeon floors. And sometimes you can grieve in a way that it's so powerful that it releases it not only for yourself, but for other people too. Like everybody's burden she carried and she laid it out there. It's something powerful to be a part of and something powerful to see have happen. And so you get to do that, and you also at the same time get to emerge and understand who you are, how powerful you are, that something happened where it was meant for you not to ever return, but here we are, that we're coming back in droves. You didn't mean for us to survive this. But we're doing more than that, and we're coming and we're coming back. And as you say, sister, claiming this is ours, right? So I'll talk another day about my experience at the Black. Talk about that now.
Right.
I'll tell you about
I want to share
that. Was powerful. Huh?
But there's something very similar this last trip, and it's interesting to go so many each time you go, and it's like a new experience, right? Even going to the places that you've been to before,
Yeah.
and going first as just yourself. So then you have
Right.
your personal experience, and then going again, and then being so aware and observant of other people's experience, and,
Yeah.
and then seeing how are we now playing in this experience all together. This last time that we went, again, and now at the end of the year of return, which had its own spirit to it. Like, they had shut down the dungeons for House Representative Nancy Pelosi to come, literally.
Oh.
And she's in all type of craziness. But nonetheless, this last time we went, this particular trip has, each of our trips have a different theme. So we went last year in the summer, and that's when we went to the last bath with a group of educators, and that was our focus. This past one was health, nutrition, and sustainability. So we had a lot of healers with us. And we're all ranging in the age from like in our 20s to early 30s. And we go to the dungeons. It's one sister that's her first time there, and she has an air about her where she doesn't say much, but she has her own like experiences, and you can kind of read all into it if you know her enough. And so we watch her. Well, she's going through the dungeons, and as my role as like a facilitator, I just kind of learn how to just take note of people, how they're behaving when they need space. You know, like, if you don't want to go in this tour with these white folks, you don't have to. We can go, we know the routes, we can go ourselves. And so this particular trip, she was not having it. So it's like, okay, we're going to go ourselves. And she ends up having her own experience where she goes into the female dungeons, and you know, same thing, you start to download, you start to hear the sounds, you start to smell the smells, and you start to retrace your experiences. Like, I've been here, one of my ancestors has been here, this place is too familiar. And in doing that, she encounters this Ghanaian, one of the Ghanaian tour guides, and he says something to her that's like profound in itself. He asked her like, this is in where she's in the specific location where the governors, at least this is how they tell the story, where the European colonizers and the governors look down, and that's they tell the story of this is where they choose, you know, the enslaved woman for the night, and whatever the case may be. And so she's down there. He opens up the door where the governors would stand, and he says to her just out of nowhere, like, you've been here before, or did they choose you? And it threw her for a loop, because it threw her for a loop that he asked the question, but again, it's also narrating her experiences of, yes, I have been here before. So as she's dealing with that, at the end of our tour, we're getting ready to walk out. As we're walking out, and it's an eerie feeling for everyone, and we hear this scream. I mean, this horrendous scream come from behind us, and we see people running around. And after the scream, we don't see nothing. We don't see nobody running to help. We don't see nothing. So we're standing there, me and the same sister, and we're looking at each other like, should we go back? Mind you, we have medical supplies on us. We're with doctors, and we're like, should we go back? And we looked at each other, and it was like almost like a no, I can't take no more, go back. So I'm just gonna go forward. And as we're walking forward, we see our brothers who are with us coming down with this young sister. She probably had to be 16. They're from the Caribbean. She's cut up, like she has you can see down to her white flesh, her cuts. And so they're telling us the story, our two brothers, and they're like, she fell through the floor. She fell and she landed on her feet. And she has a deep cut underneath her arm, a cut on her leg, and she's hysterical. Her family, she's with a lot of her family. And her parents come down, and immediately we all start, you know, taking out all type of stuff, concoctions, you know, to start aiding to her. She's bleeding. We start tending to her as a collective. Her parents and her mother are standing there. They're hysterical. They don't know what to do. Her brothers, her sisters and cousins, you could tell she's the baby of the family, because everybody's like shook into, like, they don't know what to do. So we're patching her up. They're trying to take her arm, lift her arm. She's not saying anything. She's not saying, ouch, this hurts. She's not saying stop. She's letting everybody pick and probe at her. So the two brothers are holding, like, they're the most strongest in that moment of like, okay, you know, we need to get her patched up. We need to make sure everything is clear, is clean. And me and the other sister, we're like soothing her, holding her hands, rubbing her arms, you know, like, it's gonna be okay. As people are coming, as her family members are moving her around, we like, does it hurt? Tell them to stop, you know. And you could just tell in her eyes, she wasn't crying. it was a whole moment of like, who are you? You know, if she didn't know who she was, she figured it out then. And as soon as, you know, we got her together, of course, you could tell her parents, I think her mom was from the States, her dad was from the Caribbean, because none of the staff who worked there, mind you, during the year of return, they're taxing people just to go. Okay. So nobody who worked there came with no Band-Aids. They didn't come with no bottle of water. They didn't come with no tissue to check on this baby girl. And in fact, they're saying it's her fault. They're saying she's the reason why she failed, that she wasn't listening to the tour guide. So after we settle everything, you know, and her parents know that she's together, it was actually funny because it felt like we were back in the States. Mom and dad immediately start going off on the staff, as they should, because this is their child. So they immediately start going off, and me and my sister, we sit and we talk to her, and we're just like, you know, just pouring into her, because you could tell she would never be the same after this experience. But our main deposit into her was, when you feel something, speak on how you feel. You know, you're in pain. Stop letting people come and move you and adjust your body. Stop letting people touch you. Say no, say stop, say it hurts. And we having to explain this to the people around her, you know, which are mainly of a more masculine energy of like, let her be. You know, like, I know you're concerned about her, but let her be. The more you raise her arm, you're opening her wounds. It's paining her, you know, but she's not saying anything. She's in such shock. And from the screams to the reaction to everybody, even to our own willingness to just walk away from it, like, my spirit is too heavy, I can't deal with this. But then to see how the other brothers who are skilled and trained in healing come, it was its own experience. But it was like, okay, for her, she probably, I think, was maybe 14 years old. But she stood tall. She fell through the floor and landed on her feet, you know, and it again, going back to how being in a place to have an experience with someone else of like, wow, how is this going to shape the rest of your life? So I just had to share that because it ties into especially the feminine energy that is in that space. That goes, for me, it goes back to our womb and what we carry and our responsibility to hold and to let go and to release for our sisters, and how we all, you know, make do and survive and pull one another up in those times.
Was there any particular place in those dungeons that moved you the most? I know for me, it was where they put people who were rebellious, or, you know, that one got me. I was yeah, that one got me. That just shifted me. But is there any particular place in there that you just pulled at your energy in those dungeons? Any place in particular? When I was there, Sister Imicus, who owns One Africa, I was so mad when I went because we were mixing with some white people, because it was me and the student. We had just went to go see the dungeons, but you just don't win. But we went, you know what I mean? But it was just watching the white people look at the architecture and talk about how, and that was getting on my damn nerves. There was a Ghanaian brother with a white girl putting sunblock on her. Like, it's just like the place itself didn't mean much to them, but it meant something to me. And so I was pretty angry. I just kind of was in my feelings. But then Imicus woke us up. We went back to One Africa, went to bed. I was so upset that I had to go to bed when I got back. I didn't even eat dinner. I went to bed. I was so tired. Imicus got us up at 2:30 in the morning. I will never forget this. Told us to put our whites on and took us back to the dungeon. It's the way she talks to people there. It's just so funny. You can tell she's been living there forever. And they let us in, and we did some prayers and some rituals at some of the shrines in there. And Mitch made me I felt much better because it was just like, to me, it's like a sacred space. It is just not this place where you get to go tour and look at the architecture. And it was just so impersonal for some other people. But for me, I was like, because I have Ghanaian answers, it's like someone came through here. And so for me, it's kind of like, it's a holy place for me because a great sacrifice happened here. And the one man, after I was like, in my feelings, the guy was saying a great sacrifice happened here and you're a blessing after that. I couldn't even hear the shit he was saying. I was like, I don't hear nothing you got to say. it was just so upsetting just to hear the stories, but to see people act like it was so impersonal.
You know, let me tell you that this happened to me one year. I don't even remember what year it was. Maybe it was like 2000. maybe, I think it was in 2006. And there was a white group there, and most of them were from the U.S. They were very disrespectful. You know, where you talked about where they put the rebellious ones, and they got the bars.
Yeah.
They were doing stuff like holding the bars, and then somebody would be out taking a picture, or the cannonball in the court where they would bring enslaved African women. They would pick it up and pose and take pictures. And I was talking to myself. I was like, "You gonna say something?" And then the other side, "Don't, just go on. You gonna say something?" But I was like you. I was really pissed off because it was disrespectful behavior. A lot of laughing and looking up the artifacts and taking pictures and posing with it. I was so pissed off. So we went to my group. We were at the door no return, and that's Elmina. So you have to duck to get out.
Yeah.
But I was steaming the whole time. Do you know? I did not duck. I hit my head so hard that I saw stars because I didn't duck low enough. When I got up off the floor, I had a knot this big sticking out on my head. And then it was on. Then when I saw them, I gave them a piece of my mind.
I know.
I told them, you wouldn't go to Auschwitz and ask like that.
Right.
You would never
do that. This is sacred space here. You don't come here and act like that. So that I hit my head, knocked some sense into me, and I pulled them off with the big knot.
You know what, sis? I blame the Ghanaians that run those places. I blame them for not setting a tone for behavior.
Yes,
of the guests that come there. I didn't go. I went to Ghana 3 times. I didn't go to the slave dungeons till this last trip because, quite honestly, I really wasn't like trying to be in that space. The first 2 trips, I remember my mom. She kept asking me, did you go to the Cape? Did you go to the Cape Coast yet? Did you go yet? Did you go? I was like, nah, Mom, I'm really not trying to do that right now. I'm not trying to be sad. I thought that on the first thing I would do when I got to Ghana would be to make that pilgrimage there. And I was like, I think my ancestors will rather have me enjoying myself at Accra and living up and dancing and hanging out at a chop bar or at Club 233 or something, or laying on the beach with my big hat and some high heels or something, being fabulous, than crying at an old nasty dungeon. So I'm good. So this last trip though, I'm with you, Sister Ro. I was really angry and upset when I was there. The host, the tour guide, we were a mixed company on the trip. It was a year return, so it was a lot of other folks. And but he was like cracking jokes, and like you said, the room where they put the rebellious ancestors, he said something like he just cracked a joke. I don't even remember what it said, but it was just inappropriate. So, and that was like at the beginning of the tour. So I felt like he opened the door for like other people to be kikiing and making jokes about it. And it wasn't funny. It was nothing funny about it. And then me and my cousin had to kind of gather him together. She did mostly because I wasn't having it. But anyway, about the part where they were romanticizing the relationship of the colonel, general, whoever he was, and this enslaved woman that he had children with. And I was like, wow. So she asked him, like, could she leave? What do you mean, like, he had an affair with her? Like, was she free to come and go? Or was she an enslaved woman? Like, which is it? She was raped. You think she wanted to have children with this man? Like, come on, quit telling this lie, like acting like, she has some choice in the matter. So anyway, Yeah, I went, but I don't feel like it's someplace I want to go back again.
I've been each time I've gone.
Really?
Because for me, because I'm a spiritualist, for me, I owe those people my life.
Yeah.
If my discomfort don't mean shit, I was taught my absolute worst day is better than my ancestors' best day. So for me, Jewish people, when they make that journey to Auschwitz, that is their fuel. That's why they rule the world right now. They rule the world because they say never, ever, 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 ever again. Not
And
never,
you will
ever
not forget.
You will not forget. So for me, it's like, even though that anger, that it fuels me. I think what I did, because I take people. So when I'm taking folks, they want to go there. But for me, it's like I take flowers, because Amicus made us take flowers.
We did. Right. Yeah, we did too.
Yeah, so she was like, no, get your whites on. Because I was like, I don't ever want to go back to that place. I'm so enraged.
Yeah.
And she was like, just get your stuff on. You know,
yeah.
I was so grateful that she made me do that, because I think sometimes, even when I'm in the South, there are certain places I must go to.
Right.
I must say to my ancestors, I will never forget your struggle. Never. And I'm not going to let nobody lessen it or make it, they're tired of hearing about it. I don't want to hear that. Like, we owe these people our lives, because who can survive such a horrible thing?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's just for me.
I just feel like our ancestors are all around us. And I personally just feel like I don't have to go to a cemetery to honor them, you know. So I don't never want to go back there.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
good.
That's for me personally. Like, I go to my mom's gravesite 4 or 5 times a year, take her flowers. I know mentally she ain't in there, but her body is there. I believe in sacredness, and I believe of obligations to the we call them the ancient ones, if you will.
Right.
I believe in that. I think that's why I said I'm a spiritualist. That's what I do. When I go places, like when I go to Harriet Tubman's gravesite, that's for a reason, because I am like one of Harriet Tubman's great-great-grandchildren in my mind. So I don't go salute that. Hell, if we go to salute some monuments to people who killed the shit out of our people, I could definitely go honor our freedom fighters. But that's just for me. But I feel like at least once in your life, you gotta touch those places where great sacrifices have happened. Yeah. Because if we don't do that, we almost erase ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to go there. And you know, fortunately for me, I've never been with mixed company. It's always been just my group, always. And they know, you know, after all this time, they know me, and they know, first of all, when we first come in, we set the tone. We set our intention for why we're there. And for each of those dungeons we go, we circle, we pour libation, and we pray there. We ritualize that trip. Everybody has to wear white, and we ritualize it. And if we're on our way to wherever we're going to do that final ritual, we'll wait, because it's not going to be mixed company there.
Right.
We have to wait and go in. But it's important to me to go and to perform ritual at those places, and to kind of, like you, Sister Rose, say, you know, we're never going to forget.
Right.
We thank you. And we're never going to forget. And we're going to not only not forget, when we go home, back to our respective places, we're going to tell everybody about this place, what happened here, and where you come from, whose shoulders you stand on, the blood, the DNA that runs in you, that we have gone through this middle passage, and look at us. Despite of what you tried to do.
Right on.
Yeah. I think we have to go, and it's not even so much, yes, agreeing with both of you, and like we have to go, but also recognizing how that is a source. So it's a source of energy, and there's so many energies that exist there. And to see how whether it be European descendants, even Asian folks come in who are able to look at a space that's so horrendous, the history of it is so horrendous, and draw from it things like the architecture, that's a source of energy as well. And so I think our presence there is important, not just as this umbrella term of African people, but as descendants of the enslaved people that passed down there. We have to be there to neutralize that, because people go and they pull power from it. Power that's used to liberate us, and power that's used to continue to keep us in that place. You know, so touching sister on the like blaming Ghanaians, when I can resonate with that, but also I can get how such a situation can come to be. My first time going to the dungeons was amongst Miss Company. It was in a study abroad program, but like I said, the director was Dr. Rose Walls, and she's phenomenal in facilitating study abroad groups, because it don't matter who you are, she's very clear on the messaging, you know. And we had our tour guide, I forget his last name, but it's his brother Nana, and he is well studied and researched in, you know, Pan-African studies. And I remember after our tour, he set us down and we had time for question and answers. My question was, what in the world do people around this place think? How do the folks that live around here interact with this place? And his answer was very simple, and I don't think he could have explained it any better, in that when it's an African proverb that he used, when your stomach is fed, then your mind can think. And so what that meant to me was, and how I interpreted it, is similar to us here in this place, you know, where you can have people who can come from around the world and come and visit our landmarks. They can find value in the things that we have more than we're able to find value in them. You have a local group of people that were not just oppressed and colonized, but are continuing to be exploited, having to figure out how to manage and maneuver life. We still have the same houses that they used to send the mixed children to, that's set on top of the hills and the mountains, still exist there, and the same social hierarchy is still there. And so for me, it made me think about the same thing. When our stomachs are fed, our consciousness, we think clearly. And then even continuing to go and to see how, you know, I could see the same tour guides in the dungeons kikiing and laughing with the white folks and be outside talking about them. That whole idea of a double consciousness that W.E. Du Bois, that concept is not just unique to us in the States. You know, you look at folks, you listen and learn from folks like Frantz Fanon, and understanding that whole idea with dealing with French colonialism and cultural appropriation and being domesticated. That colonial mentality impacts all of us. And so I think it is our throughout the diaspora, it is our responsibility of, when we come into contact to one another, to give each other the tools needed to liberate ourselves, you know. So we make it very clear, similar when we walk in, if it's a tour guide, if he's saying something that's not true, you know, it's like, all right, bro, I get that you got to do this for a job, but no, you know what I'm saying? Your hands are tied in this space. You know, your livelihood is dependent on how well you tell the story. So I recognize where you're at, but as for the rest of the group, I'm here to spread knowledge, because I'm not tied to the same restrictions as you are in this space. And so holding each other accountable, there's so many arguments and so many, like, not even so much arguments, but so many exchanges that we've had to engage in when we go on the trips, right in these dungeons, ideological exchanges, you know. So it's the understanding that we are working with collectively a colonial mentality, and just because we're on the continent, you know, that doesn't change it. You know, colonization has the same effect. You know, it's ingrained in the religion system. It's ingrained in the economic system. It's ingrained in the education system. So how do we free ourselves from that? You know, it's only to engage, you know, because at the very end of the day, the folks that live around that space, their economy may have been impacted by colonization, but they still have their language. They still have their spiritual practices. They still have all of those things. I can't expect for them to be able to fully understand the history that our people experienced once they left those shores. That's on us. The onus is on us to come back and tell those stories. And so I think in being there, we have to be there and strong, because people come and continue to come and draw from that energy and use it to continue to colonize, like, Africa, and not even just in theoretical sense. Right there in Ghana, you still got people that's up in the mines, you know, foreigners up in the mines exploiting the local people. So to see the trickle down effect of how we're still living in the times of our ancestors means we still have, like, collective work to do. And we just got to go and plug in and charge ourselves up however we can, you know, because the fight, whatever, Mama Ro, I learned this from you, wherever our post is, we got to be ready to work. So I definitely can agree with both of you on that mission to whenever we go, we touch the ground, you know, and learn something new, you know.
Yeah.
You know what? When you were speaking, I think one of the things I learned the first time I went is that experience of what happened in the dungeons, that was not everybody's experience. I learned that some people, just like in the States, some people feel like they aren't attached to the Black experience. They could be blacker than 1,000 midnights. And it's not my job to jog their memory that they are. It's like, no, I'm gonna let you stand in that truth. You don't get to have both. As if I'm standing up being responsible and you don't want to be responsible, then you have to deal with the consequences of you not being part of the battle. Because that is very tiring to keep trying to be out there fighting 1,000 fights and then people reap the benefit and they don't put nothing back. When you think about our ancestors' struggle and all the stuff that there are people who walk through doors that would have never been open to them, but those same people would have never fight for that door to be open in the first place.
Right.
And that's really sad for me. And so for me, when I went through the dungeons, I really began to understand that enslavement experience, that wasn't everybody's. Some people are not attached to that at all.
Right.
That's what I learned. And that was such an eye-opening thing for me, because I think, Tia, that's why I don't do romanticism. It's hard for me to do romanticism. I'm so serious. I'll be like, y'all, but what amount? Like, you know, it's just, I feel like a Debbie Downer. I'll be like, I don't really want to do that. But I'm grateful. You know what I mean? When you were in Ghana, what foods did y'all like?
Everything.
Yeah.
That was heavy.
Did she say food?
Everything.
Because I didn't miss
Thank you.
I didn't gain any weight. I actually lost weight, but I was there. But I did eat. I ain't gonna lie to you.
No,
Banku and fish.
Banku.
Banku and fish and I miss Banku.
Jollof rice. That's jambalaya to me. That's rice and stew, black eyed peas, wache, all of that. The fresh fruit, the bananas. They don't taste like starch. You can see the seeds.
The pineapple, the mango,
avocados. I learned to eat
sweetest pineapple out of Cape Coast.
I miss that wache. I miss garden egg stew. I just made garden egg stew last week. And okra soup, seafood okra soup. Yeah. I miss that. And the pepper sauce. Pepper sauce.
It's so similar to our food, I think.
Yeah,
it is similar between the way African Americans, I'm just using that as a term, cooking styles and Ghanaian or Nigerian cooking styles, since we're looking at West Africa.
Yeah, I think they're one and the same, especially like most of us here on the West Coast, we come from the South. So some people may call them Creole food, but just that Southern food, hella tomato sauce, spices, rice, beans. We eat the same thing, even our greens, you know, lava sauce, that's greens. You know, it's the same. That's the connection. It's the aesthetic, it's the taste of it. You know, I'm telling, one of these days, if don't nobody beat me to it, I think we should definitely have more restaurants that fuse together that mixture of like soul food here and West African food, because they're literally, it's the same ingredient. It's just like, okay, what area is your mama from? You know, that's the only thing that's different, but it's the same. It's the same taste.
You know what I'm surprised didn't transfer over though, because I love a goosey, and I know palava sauce is, you know, so palava sauce has the goosey in it, right? Yeah. But I feel like a goosey never really made it here. Like we got greens and stuff, but I wonder why the pumpkin seed. Why we don't use? What do we have that could compare to the pumpkin seed and
but the pumpkins, I don't know.
Nothing. It's weird. That's like my favorite. Like I love some agusi. I love some palava sauce. Definitely the tomato onion combination pepper sauce is us. And even you know, the kinky, you know, the cornmeal kind of. Yeah, but we don't really use cassava, right? And then our yam, we don't use anything like yam, like we're more rice people. But I miss the food, y'all. I love the food. I prefer Nigerian food to Ghanaian food.
I prefer Ghanaian food to Nigerian food.
Really?
I prefer them both.
I've been to Nigeria
Right.
twice.
Whose mama cooked each of them? That's the difference.
Yeah. But you know, you can get the seed, pumpkin seed here, goosey seed.
I know.
Yeah.
I bring all my spices and stuff from home to cook. It's cheaper. Yeah.
To cook
I bring it over. But
I
yeah.
know with the falafel, with the goosey seed, it's more of the seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Less of the green.
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, in soul food, there's nothing, we don't have any dishes that use those ingredients, is what I'm saying. So I thought that was interesting, like, if you had to compare the two. But I prefer Nigerian food. I think it's much more complex of a flavor profile to me. Ghanaian food to me is like this. And then Nigerian food is like this.
I don't know.
Like there's levels. I think there's levels.
They both
It
do.
really do. It depends on whose mama cooks it. But I definitely get it. Even, and I look, and this is a theory, I don't know, but looking at, okay, when you talk about just the change from Ghanaian to Nigerian food, and what you're saying, Nigerian food being more complex. So maybe it's the older food, is that, you know, looking at the movement of people. You got the Yoruba people. I think they came before the Ashanti people, and then over the Atlantic Sea, you see how things get lost, but how we still keep the flavors. I think that's all in it, because people be so big on differences. It's whole jollof war between Ghanaians and Nigerians, and I'm like, it's the same thing. It's just a little tomato sauce. What y'all missing is the shrimp. What y'all missing is the chicken. What y'all missing is the jambalaya. Y'all think y'all doing something, but really, you know, this is how you really do it. So
I love that. I was just thinking, a good friend of mine is Liberian, and they made like this Liberian dish. It was a red sauce, hot as hell. I loved it though, even though it was hot. Like, even when it was cool, it was still hot.
Yes.
It was very, very good. So I think Africans who came here to North America through enslavement, you have to remember they weren't allowed to bring certain things.
Yeah.
So how do we still get gumbo when we know the base of that is African?
Yeah.
Yeah. The okra.
We just kind of, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know. The food I just loved. I love that black rice that I had at One Africa. That black rice was kicking.
I've
been home. Yeah, it was very good. That fresh fish was good, because I love some fish.
Oh, yeah, you know, you taking me back now. Like, I'm ready to get on the plane to go and can't even go.
What do y'all think about the food service in general in Ghana?
Depending on where you at.
Restaurants and stuff.
It depends on where you are.
yeah.
Woo! Because, you know, I have to take my American stuff out of it.
Yeah.
The food, but it's like, how long is it gonna take for this damn food to come?
Well, you know,
I struggle with
a sign that will tell you this ain't no fast food restaurant.
So we gotta order it before we go. Like, let's just kind of, you know, let them know, call ahead of time. So,
you know what's funny, when we travel by ourselves, like when I travel by myself, it's easy to fall into that, like, for me, that ethnocentric, like, oh, I'm, you know, kind of Western idea. Y'all taking too long, hurry up. But when we're in groups, we put Ghana time to a whole different other shame. And that's going back to, like, we all have our subcultures. When we do our groups, when I tell you there hasn't been a trip where we've been able to be on time to anything, like, the restaurants be looking at us like, for real, y'all are an hour late, but y'all are later than we are late. Like, how does that work? And it makes me laugh, because it's like, okay, that's the mentality here. At the same time, you got family functions. You got to tell your family 3 hours early, because they still gonna come 6 hours late. You know, so it's easy to go over there. I know for me, it's easy to go over there by myself and pretend like this is not the reality that I also have to live in. But when it's a group of us in our trips, we miss dead bars. We've been late to everything you can think of. We've been late to, and it's like, how, you know, that whole idea that time is only a guide and not a God. I'm like, I guess it's no rush for nothing, you know. I guess whatever's supposed to be when we hungry, you know, I guess we eat when it's time. It's very interesting though, on the concept of time, not so much just food, but the concept of time, how we literally are one and the same.
You know, it was funny. I hate to say this, but they fried rice was bomb. I'm sorry. And I'm not even a rice eater like that, but that fried rice, I was like, wait, who was back there? Some Africans back here making this fried rice? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Very good. I mean, when I didn't want the jollof, I would have fried rice.
Yes.
I'm not a big tomato. I'm not a big yams and stuff. I'm not really big on that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the rice. I could do some rice. I can do some rice. I can do any kind of rice.
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all miss salads when you were there?
Yes.
I did. I couldn't wait to get home and get a salad, like a proper salad. I was like, oh,
I did. I really did.
But
they're becoming more health conscious, though.
if you go to the major hotel, you can eat salad there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've gone there to eat salad.
It's like, what about the clothes? Because that's my favorite part. When I go to the market to get fabrics, oh God, I lose my mind.
That's therapy.
I thought you said the club. You said the clothes or the club?
She said the clothes.
Clothes.
The clothes and the club.
Clothes in the club. Clothes in the club.
What about the club?
So you can imagine after 23 years how much I have, right? It's a shame. It's a shame. But what happens every year I go, I say, I'm not going to buy anything. No fabric. I'm not getting anything made. I say that every time I go, and I fail every time. I can go to, you've been to that textile market in Macola. And it's rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of fabric. Right? But what happens, I see sisters walking and they be having on some bad outfits. And I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at what she got on. Look how it fits her body. I want to. Yeah. So it's almost like an addiction.
It is an addiction. It's absolutely an addiction. I'm addicted and I'm not ashamed to.
I love the fabric. I have so much.
The way the outfits look on the women. So I thought like, okay, I'm not built like that. I don't have no booty like that. I don't have that. We was in the breast line twice or something, but we didn't get the butt part. But when they make the clothes, you end up with the shape. You be like, damn, how did y'all do? Is that all? Do I have that? But it's the way they cut the clothes and the way.
Custom fit.
Yeah.
Hey, how about how getting custom clothes spoils you to where you don't want to buy off the rack no more?
Yeah.
I be walking through the stores and I just be like, I don't buy ready-made. I just don't. My sister always rolls her eyes at me and I was like, I can't wear ready-made clothes no more. I just can't. It's terrible. It's an addiction.
So that's all she does is make. She's from Ghana. That's all she does is make. That's her job.
Hey, I need that link.
Yes, I can hook up with Elizabeth. And then her brother's a tailor. He's good too. And then there's a guy in Fairfield, Ghanaian brother. He real good. Like I need some local links. Women. I don't know what that's about.
Same with hairdressers.
Yeah, I just love it. It just makes me feel like I don't know. I this is how I look every day, but I don't know about y'all, but people even treat you differently when you wear that. White people wait for you to pass them so they can say something. I'm like, this white woman gonna wait for watch this.
And they just be smiling. They just be smiling. Just smiling.
They gotta let you know either they've been to Africa or they be trying to guess. Is that Nigerian? Like they'll be just like, yeah, okay. What is
Rhoda, they be bowing. You ever have them bow or curtsy? They bow, right? They bow.
I love it. So real quick, Tia, you went to the clubs. I know you and Dadisi probably went to the clubs.
I went to the clubs.
I'm in the bed asleep. I ain't gonna lie. You know how I am. I'll be exhausted. But what's the clubs like?
There's no such thing as a wallflower. There's no such thing as like, I'm too cool to dance. It don't matter if you come with money, if you come with your last 5 CDs, when you come to the club, you come to club. Like it's a verb. Clubbing requires something other than just looking fly in my experiences. Yeah. And I love the variety. We would start at like the local club or like the local spot, Purple Pub, and end up at like, some lavish
Purple
place.
Pub is lit.
Oh, always.
That's like the most ratchetest, gulliest, ghetto ass club, but it is so lit. It's anti bougie, but like that's where all the kids are. It's so much fun. It remind me of Jamaica. Purple Pub is lit, but But then when you want to do upscale bougie, you can do that too. I like 233. That's the grown and sexy jazzy spot.
Yeah, that's a
I
nice.
like Reggie Rockstone's place is nice. I can't think of the name of it.
You guys ever go
After
to,
Office.
Did you guys ever go to Chez Afrique?
Yes.
I didn't go there.
They have the best at Goosey there. I forget who said they liked the
Word.
Goosey, but
They had that live band on Friday, and they party all night.
It's live places everywhere. What's the other one over by the Gold Coast is nice. It's really nice. It's over by the embassies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like Kiki Bees. That's a little sports bar.
Mm-hmm. That's
live place in East Lagoon. And I also went for karaoke a lot to Honeysuckle.
I know it's in Nima.
Yeah,
I know the one you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of little spots, and then in the Movenpick hotel, there's a nice bar, a little upscale bar in there. I spent a lot of time hanging out. Me and my friend guy at Labadi Beach, like in the evenings, just eating fish, drinking beer, fried yams, just hanging out, and that's what I love. Like going someplace, going to the beach at night, and it's not cold.
Yeah.
You know, it's 2:00 in the morning, and it's hella people out, like on a school night, just like partying, drinking beer. I mean, I know it was kind of the holidays too, this last trip, but man, I just missed that. I just missed that rolling out the house late at night. It's still warm. You know, people in the streets dancing, drinking, chopping it up. I miss it. I love it.
What things did you see with Africans that's us? Y'all do that here too? Oh Lord. What things did you see that was like?
Hey, you know what I noticed? Africans don't like cats. We don't like cats. You know, we're not really cat people.
Yeah, I'm not big on animals, period. I put up with them. Like dogs. I'm like, come on, get your dog. Come on, get your dog. You know.
Yeah, they're not really cat people.
You know, the first time I went, I recognized just the us and the we. Like I saw like my grandmother or my uncle, right? Is you make these connections like that looks like my cousin, or that looks like my so and so, and so just kind of I don't know how to explain it. It's more of the energy and rhythm of us. There's a rhythm and there's an energy. And so even the way a mother would be talking to her child reminds me of my mother. You know, growing up. The way the mother might put her hands on her hips, or might like that's my mother, or the look. You know, or the way the men would kind of congregate would remind me of my father and his friends, right? And the way they would be. It's this beingness that is so familiar to what I remember growing up. So it's hard to kind of articulate because it's just beingness that feels like home, which is why I think I felt at home immediately.
Someone in the room is asking, is actually Nikki, so my cousin. She said, is there a trip planned for 2021?
West to West movement.
Yes.
You have a website or just a page? Because I can put that up there.
I don't have a page. So it's just my email address.
Okay.
You can put westtowestmovement.com and westtowestmovement@gmail.com.
And that's West, number 2?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So is that a travel agency, or is that your tour group, or what's West to West?
So we do a lot, the trips, and
now her stuff gonna freeze. Hold on, she gonna come back and tell you it's a real movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another young sister basically started going to Ghana, and they do these educational, cultural tours.
Okay.
They also teach. They also do resources. They, you know, I love it when young people get to go early enough, and they can find other young people like that. And they get to put their stuff together like Tia and Takara has done. I call them TNT.
Right.
You know, I love. Oh, she's shouting back in. Hold on. Okay, hold on, Tia.
Let me say while she's coming in, you know, I do these what I call in Krabia homecoming pilgrimages. It's a pilgrimage to me, and a Krabia translates to the soul's destiny. So it's never been my position to try to convince people they should go. What I do is for people who are folks who always said, I want to go to the motherland one day. And so I see Ghana as the gateway to the motherland. And it's for people who it's just part of their destiny. They just have to be there. So again, if folks are interested and want more information, my email address, kentucky7@yahoo.com.
Okay.
I can contact it.
Get that up there. So I put the West to West website up there. And Sister's trying to get back in. And then I'll also share your information too, Aba Gerri. Hold on. Okay, Tia, you back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, tell us about West to West. Even though I did put your website and information up, tell us about West to West.
Thank you. So we're an organization that really has wraparound educational services, and we facilitate the exchange of resources, education, culture, and the diaspora. And we do that through travel and exposure. So we do coordinate and facilitate trips on an annual basis to the continent, and sometimes twice a year for more focused ones. We have an annual family affair trip that happens every December. With the exception of we may look at how this December is going with all of these travel restrictions. And so on top of our trips, and really before our trips, we offer educational services that are mainly focused on youth. Right now we have an online school program that's Monday through Saturday, 2 hours a day, that focus in different academic subjects for elementary and middle school students, but we also work on building the capacity of parents also to be able to homeschool and teach their children from a Pan-African centered curriculum and perspective. So the education piece and the trips go hand in hand. We also work to facilitate specialized connections, whether it be investors, looking to go to Ghana for those sorts of things, whether it be artists. We have a pretty wide range and base of artists that we are connected with both in Ghana and here in the States. So we do a little bit of both, but it's centered on the connections and it's centered on education as well.
I know. You think of the music of West Africa in particular is what we're focusing on. How does that make you feel? Because it just makes you bounce. The music feels like it's like a higher vibration. Because I think music has vibration on it. It can take you up or down or just. Yeah. But to me, it makes you just can't be listening to the music and be sitting there like this. Like it's something.
Right. Who's your favorite artist, bro? West African artist right now.
I don't know if I could. Okay, so my fiance is Ghanaian. He plays a lot of stuff.
Who you listening to? Like
for real. I just be like this, like that, because all of it sound like it's in the club. Like, not in the club, but it's that kind of music, about love. And I do like that they talk about love. They ain't calling nobody a bunch of bitches. Like, I'm not trying, it's always about love. I'm gonna get with you. I want to be, it sounds like that, which is nice. But I don't really know the name of the artist. He's not even here because he would come in like it's because he know them all. Like one guy, between that and African movies, which I've seen some hilarious ones where I was like, Lord Jesus, like like the one dude who plays the old man all the time, but he's really young.
Yeah, that comedian. I forget his name. He
has these little shorts since the quarantine.
The Ghanaian one.
Yeah, he's so good. But he's funny though. Yeah. Do you have any favorite artists?
Burna Boy, Shatta Wale. I like Wizkid. I like Rema. I like Yemi Alade. Oh, this sister artist I've been listening to a lot. Samba the Great. Have y'all heard her? Oh, she's bad. Samba the Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been rocking to her a lot. Ebony, rest in peace. I like King Promise. Yeah, all the new people. And then I still, like yesterday I was listening to Sunny Ade. I be listening to Fela. When I'm feeling old school, I listen to that. Some old school high life. But yeah, I like
the old school high life. Maybe because I'm old.
I like it all.
Yeah, I do like that. What about you, Tia?
I like all of those who you mentioned. R2Bs, from the production side of it to the artists that are in that music group. Definitely King Promise, Darko Vibe, Santi. I got a chance to go to a King Promise concert, and I'll be 25 this year, and it was an even younger crowd. They were in their they were probably teenagers. It was King Promise, Darko Vibes, a lot of other artists coming, but the energy and the vibe at that concert was so lit. They had so much energy, and they were so peaceful. Like, it really was only about the music and enjoying the experience. And even the aesthetic of the artists, it's interesting because when you look at some of like the older artists, or like artists from like the 70s, seeing the connection between like Fela and James Brown, they essentially represented the same thing to music in two different places. And then to see the same thing happening now, within this, revolutionary time and stage and age, where you see the connection between the artists. So I enjoy, it's a lot of artists I listen to that I don't know the names of. But I love the sound and the visuals that we're able to put out, like the music videos. I be watching music videos more than anything, and they tell full stories. So
fashion. Did you go to any of the concerts around the year return, Afro Nation or Afrochella? Did you go to any of those shows?
We went to Afrochella. In fact, our co-founder Kari, from Sacramento, Takara Johnson, she performed at Afrochella. And that was something that was put on just through our connections from, her producer being a part of R2Bs, another brother doing our transportation. So it was dope. Afrochella was lit. It was a nice experience. They really were committed to sticking to having like a full, in terms of on their main stage, African artists, which we respected regardless of anything. They had continental African artists performing. So it was a nice vibe.
Right on. So, language, family, in Africa, how did y'all do with language?
Fine. They speak English.
Yeah.
And in terms of their indigenous language, like everybody speaks some form of the colonizer, whether it's French or German or Italian, or I can go on that. We can just name every European who participated in colonization or oppression of people. But in terms of those like Ga and Tree and
I tried to learn a little Tree while I was there, and my small tree, cra. I use it from time to time. They be tickled. I throw a little tree on them. It was fun. I'm still learning.
I know how to greet people.
Yeah, greetings.
I know how to say thank you.
Thank you.
I know
Dadisi.
I know more God words than I know anything else. So, and I know enough God words to get myself in trouble, where then they start talking to me full on God, and I'll be like, hold up.
Right. I think we know how to find a lingua franca because most of our communication is body language, So I pay attention to the body language. I would use Tree mostly if I had to pay for something, or go into a slight pidgin of like understanding. It's a lot of ahs and yes, and it's sounds, That's what I enjoyed the most is the sound of it. Like if you surprise, like hey, or something like that. I think that I know that it's less of the words and it's the reaction, it's the facial expression, So. you can be your most dramatic self
Look.
and talking and tell a whole story without even saying a word. It's all in sounds.
And the most used word, Dabi.
No.
Debbie.
Yeah. I love, you know what's funny is that those universal things. And I remember one time we was there and it was some, we was in the village and the kids were playing. And I talked to adults, they like kind of, and they kept telling the kids, like in their language, to like get away. Why the one woman stood up with her shoe, and them kids took off. And I said, "That's my mom. Your mama got to take that shoe off." She just
what I'm saying, like my mother, the queen of the shoe. She could throw a shoe and it would turn the corner and crack you.
So I looked, I said, "Wow!" But I do love when they do the sound. Oh, like this, it's this. Even when I watch the movies, they do themselves. I'll be crying. I'm like, I didn't realize how much sound they do. We, you know, it's just sound. Like, and you know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is no words there.
Right.
What things have you seen them do that you know came directly from us in the States? You'd be like, oh Lord Jesus.
I think I see it for a young, like within like younger generations, the music, you know, and I think that's worldwide. Like not to say music forms and art doesn't emerge everywhere in the diaspora because we're naturally creative people, but the spotlight is put within the U.S. because our culture has been commodified and sold to the world for generations.
Right.
We do hold the spotlight for certain things. So some of the more grimy, grittier sounds, you know, even the style and the swag a little bit, because I would say in Ghana, it's interesting because you have a fusion of the European influence, then you have the cultural influence, and then you have the influence from the Western, and then they make their own dope fusion of them. But I would say in the music and some of the language, like I would hear, and this is us trying to find that, again, that middle, like that common language to connect, talking to folks like my age, and they'll say something and it can be like a street vernacular from the States, and they'll say it and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about. Are you trying to say it because you're trying to look cool to me, but you don't know what that means? Like, are you like, what is it that you're doing? Like, that's real disrespectful. So I see it with more so like within the hip hop generation, like we do like have, you know, have been an influencer in the hip hop field. So for younger, you know, us younger folks, I see it in the music and the style and like the hip hop language as well. And then it's their own twang on it as well, because every place got a slum, got a bottom. So it's pretty cool.
I know one time I went to the dungeon with Imicus, and there was a young man. He came up to, you know how people come up to you at the dungeon, and he was like, my sister, he would talk to me, his pants were sagging. And Imicus said, pull your pants up, because the way she talks, you know, she said, do you know what that means? And she proceeded to tell him, like, with the pants, he pulled them goddamn pants up so quick. That was so funny, because he was like trying to, like, you know, like, I'm my sister. And he had his pants sagging. And Imicus said, I don't want to see that. She's like, pull your pants up. That means that somebody, and she started, and he was like, and he pulled his pants up. I was laughing so hard. I was like, wow, this is not funny. But it was just like, you know, because sometimes people think they want to say stuff to connect with you. You know what I mean? But they don't even know that's like, oh, that's not a good thing. Like, you know, it's not a good thing. Have anybody else with something that you've seen like that came directly from us? Lord Jesus. Anybody else had that experience?
No, not really.
Did you, Aba Gerri? I know when I was in South Africa, I met some young, I taught like over 1,000 young girls for a month when I was there throughout South Africa. And them girls were so in love with Beyonce. So there was one girl, she's like, my name is Beyonce. Like I was like, oh Lord. Like it was cute though. But I was like, I'm way down here in South Africa, almost on the Cape. And she talking about Beyonce. You know, it was just really cute.
You know what I would say, the thing that I probably saw the most, I think, was just like, I call it the reality TV behavior, like Love and Hip Hop. I don't watch reality TV, but you know, some of the characters and caricatures of those shows, Love and Hip Hop, the housewife programming. It's like some of that behavior, that look, the Fashion Nova style, the coffin nails. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
For Nigeria, it's funny because I've been to Nigeria once, and even all my Nigerian friends and like seeing them in Ghana, it's always we set trip everywhere. Tribalism and we set trip everywhere, no matter where we go. And we're not the only people to do it, right? You think that the Europeans have had whole wars over mountains, like a mountaintop for real. So it's no wonder why I think that's the part of who we are. And I think it goes back to me having seen the same thing of like,
were you in Lagos or Abuja? Or where
I
in
went to
Nigeria
Lagos.
did you go?
I went to Lagos. Yeah, and I stayed in Anthony Village, which is like, it's not on the island. It's like, it's kind of the trenches. It's real fast paced, not too far from where Fela Shrine is. And
Ikeja. Was it near Ikeja?
I don't know.
Fela Shrine is in Ikeja. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so it was near Fela Shrine. But it's seeing the similarities and like, okay, people evolve and emerge and create their own sounds and looks in the whatever time they're in based on what they have. And I think it goes back to me looking at like, okay, here we have access to cameras and networks and an international platform to be able to record ourselves. And that in itself like comes with this a whole dramatized act. But seeing my homegirls who are like Nigerian, like born and bred, and seeing the similarity, I'd be like, okay, it's not even a matter of you getting something from me. This is really in you, like this is really a part of who you are. The same way I can go to somewhere and see my cousins who are like glamored, flamboyant with their look and their style. I even looking at pictures of like old chiefs and queens and princesses of seeing like, damn, we are really just a loud, flamboyant people.
Yeah.
And we don't play no
unapologetic.
Unapologetic. It can be costume jewelry. Like I know some of the chiefs be in costume jewelry, but it's just loud, and you think of that comes from an environmental thing. We come from a people where gold would wash up on the shores. You can turn shells and anything into something creative. And even here sometimes where some people were like, they'll talk about or they'll talk down on to like Black folks or Black women or Black people who, let's say they don't look like they can afford the look, but they figure out to have that look for themselves because that's just who we are. And that flamboyance, I seen for the first time and was able to look at it as not as something negative, but like, damn, we just loud and compare extra. And you put a camera in front of us. You put a camera in front of us. Oh, it's girl, true. That's it. True. So I learned to appreciate that and recognize like, okay, we just have more cameras in front of us here, but we really extra all over. And I can hear you a mile away. I can spot you a mile away. You got on the brightest, most uncoordinated colors, but hey, you gleaming. So I find that amusing that no matter where we go, that's a part of who we are. You can't escape it. Just loud, just loud.
That's right on.
But it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's true.
I'll be into some stuff. Yeah, that is absolutely beautiful. What about spirituality? How did that play out for you all? Spirituality or religion when you were in the parts of Africa you were in? What did you see a lot of? Or is it diffused into their being? Like it just...
That's almost like a whole nother...
I know. You could do a whole conversation on that.
Like I know when I first went to Ghana, I would always see like Praise the Lord Hair Salon, Love Your Cab Company, or whatever it was. It would always have like these, emphasis to God, and then it would say the name of the business or whatever. I did get a chance to visit an African church. It was a very different experience for me, having grown up in Baptist, and it for me, this is just my opinion, it didn't feel genuine. It felt rehearsed for me. It was like they were emulating for the most part. That was my experience. It was kind of like sign up for the Holy Ghost, or it's just, I don't know about y'all, but I've been in Black churches where it just felt very organic, even though, like it was their interpretation. It's like when you go to a Black church, people be really working out their shit for real. Like they really, there it just felt very rehearsed or very like, this is what they do over here. So that's what I meant by copying something that somebody else seen. Like the same way some of us copy white people. And we think
so many churches, there's so many churches there. Everybody is there. The Mormons, the Jehovah's Witness. It's so many churches, and they're all kind of different types. You have your Pentecostal types. You have your the one from London. I can't say it. First with an A.
Agnostic?
No.
Apostolic.
Angelican? No.
A-N. I can't get it out. Anyway, but you have all kind of churches there, and it's in and of itself a big business.
Okay.
It's big business, and they're everywhere.
I didn't go to church in Ghana or Nigeria. I had intended to go to church a few times and just never made it. I don't go to church here, but I just wanted to go for the experience.
Dude, that's why I went.
When I'm in Nigeria, I attend a lot of weddings and engagement parties. And in Ghana, my second trip, when I went to Kumasi, I went to attend the funeral or the 1 week for one of the Queen Mothers in Apatoja. It's my cousin's mother-in-law. And I find that I'm more interested in the indigenous, customs and traditions and religious practices and rites than the Christian ones.
Mhm.
And so that was just a beautiful experience, attending that. So yeah, maybe the next trip I'll make it to a church and a mosque. I just haven't yet.
Yeah, you can see them. You can see the Muslims. You can see the Christians,
Mhm.
obviously. But I also know there's a fusion because even when we were in Ghana and we all got readings, I got my reading from a woman who practiced voodoo, and we had to cross the border for that. Togo.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody got a reading from a Muslim man who, when we got into his little house, he was in there throwing all the stuff. So even though in public he appeared as a Muslim, that's what I mean about they still look very different than our stuff. I mean, to a degree. I still feel like they understand that there's the what you need to survive. You're a Christian, you're a Muslim, and then there's what you do in your house and your root. You know what I mean?
It's just like that here, though. I mean, I was definitely more interested in like learning about juju and who believes and practices it and who does it. But I think that if you look at the Chinese people, they do the same thing. You look at Indians, they do the same thing. They present a public front, but then at home, you don't know what kind of shrines and altars and stuff they have in their home and their indigenous, practices and cultures.
I think the only difference between us and all those other groups, to be honest with you, nobody has been oppressed like Africans.
Oh, no doubt. No, I hear you.
We just talked about all those white people running all over Africa with their religion. And some people are persecuted if they knew that's what you did. So you can't, like here, we could be all out there like, oh, Rishas and hoodoo. We don't give a fuck because this is America. But you can't do that there. You know what I mean? It's not as safe, if you will, when you know your livelihood could depend on something. Because they really have, they always come in with either the military or the missionary. That's always the way white people have kind of conquered people. And so when we see all those missionaries, the 7-day Adventists, the whatever they are, all over Africa, it's a way of, because they know the power of a people is at their spiritual base. So they have to.
That's interesting, Rose. So you're saying that
I've seen
that even in Africa, they're practicing their indigenous religious in secret.
Yeah, because it may not be safe where they are. If you don't have Islam and Christianity, they like two opposing forces, but really working on the same team. It's too.
I don't think of it as a safety issue. That's interesting. I just thought,
Oh yeah, some of the places. And that man was Muslim. He's like, Salam alaikum. Then we get inside his place, and then he got all the bones. I said, what the? You talking about? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, wait a minute, ain't you a Muslim?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, back when we do that here, we do survive. Like, that's like when people practice voodoo, but they in the Catholic Church because that look most similar to them being able to still practice some of their beliefs. You know what I mean? But for me, that was one of the shocking things in Africa. You have your own idea of what you think Africa is going to be like. And then you get there and be like, y'all in some shit like we're in some shit. You know, you know, even though y'all may still have y'all language, y'all still got some of the same oppression stuff we're dealing with.
Yeah, with white Jesus everywhere.
Oh, and that white Jesus from 1955, you know.
Yes, that one with the
that was killing me. I don't know what's happening, y'all. I used to have really long locks, and every time I would get in the taxi in Ghana, the guy would put on Bob Marley. They would turn to reggae while I would be like, I think they think I'm a Rasta.
Yeah.
Every car I would get in.
You know, I've been to Nigeria twice. And I only went through Lagos, but I spent time in Ibadan and in Ochogbo. And so because, you know, I was there for spiritual reasons, the people I was with practiced openly.
Did you go to the Oshun Shrine?
I did.
Is that when you went to Oshogbo? Yeah. I was supposed to go at Christmas time, but everybody was saying it wasn't safe and, you know, this, that, and the third. And I will never go to Nigeria again at Christmas time. But on my next trip, God willing, I'm going to make it to Oshogbo. To the
Oshun River and Oshun Grove. I have to go see it.
Did you experience any of that in Ghana with the traditional spiritual, like over the Akan or anything like that when you were in Ghana?
You know, I've been to several shrines there. So inside of the shrine, they're practicing openly inside the shrine. You know, I think that just everyday folk walking around, there is a risk of being isolated if you openly practice stuff. You know, there's some of my friends in Ghana, for example, even the act of meditating is seen as blasphemous. Even the act of meditating. And you're seen as being outside of what is godly behavior. So, but in the shrines and the people who practice, they are openly practicing their system, their spiritual system.
See, have you experienced anything like that, or what has been your experience?
Yeah, I think it's going back to that double consciousness. For Ghana, I had my first reading, my first act of like intentional divination in Ghana, and that was the first place where I seen Black folks still worshiping white Jesus or praying to white Jesus. So I think you have the full spectrum of everything in between. You know, within this country where like the figureheads of the actual country are Black in complexion, you know, their skin is of copper complexion, but then you still see how there are so many foreign and enforced practices that the people hold. And like my roommate, my first year in Ghana, that's my sister today, Elam would wake up. Oh, she would think I was a heathen because I would come in at all wee hours of the night, morning, you know, doing whatever, just whatever. I was on everything. Ellen wake up top of the morning praying. I mean, not like that. Praying every morning. I mean, she would go in and start speaking in tongues. But again, going back to, I was raised in the church, so it's not an unfamiliar sound. It's just like, damn, can you stop reminding me of all my worldly ways every morning? But every morning. And then when Ellen finally invited me to her church, it was a Catholic church. I'd never been to a Catholic church before. And I mean, the singing was Catholic. It was Catholic. It wasn't no Baptist, you know, to it. I said, oh, this is some other stuff going on here. Like, you know, it's different. But again, you see the full spectrum. Cape Coast. I remember my first time going to the Cape Coast Festival and just being in Cape Coast. I met a brother there some years back who is still our brother today. His name is Kwame. And he was the one to break it down, what I was already seeing, because similar to here, we know we exist we exist like there's people watching us, and we communicate like there's people listening to us. So we have our own coded ways of existing and doing. To the normal eye, you would think nothing is going on, but to somebody who knows, it's like, okay, I see what y'all doing here. Y'all are having to exist, in this politically correct way for the sake of your livelihood, your social status, your security within yourself, but then you still have to be your truest self. And so in Cape Coast, during the festival time and all the time, you see men, you see boys dressing up in the caricatures with the masquerade stuff that seem very flamboyant and feminine, running through the streets, dancing, swaying, swerving, everything, grooving, moving their hips in close proximity to one another. So you see the breakdown of like that masculine and feminine construct, and more so that recognition that they're one and the same. That just because you're a man, you exhibit both feminine and masculine energies. And you see at the same time the churches, you see people coming out of the church house on a Sunday going straight to the streets to go gyrate and twerk and move down the street. So that experience being in Cape Coast, not just for the festival time, but all the time, you see how they work hand in hand for one another, and how people are able to it's not always behind closed doors. And that was what the brother was explaining to me. Like, there's a lot of harmony amongst the different religious groups because they all have respect for the traditional practices and in their celebrations and their festivals. And also too, it's not the city, so within the city, within every city, there's respectability politics are a lot more, because you're trying to keep up with this social economic status, this class status, and all of those things. So it wasn't until at Afrochella, walking out, that was the first Black Jesus I had ever seen in Ghana. And it was his brother. It was literally only one painting. He painted it. And of course, that was a conversation starter. Like, I ain't seen not one yet, and he went into his own history. Like, growing up, he didn't even have anything. He didn't even have images to help him create this image of God, so he had to practically look in the mirror, because Jesus almost looked like him. So that reclamation process that he experienced is a part of, similar to how, like, my grandparents had to experience that reclamation process, because they grew up in churches where there was still white, blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesuses. It wasn't until they started having kids and you had, like, this Black Renaissance or this Black creative movement emerge for, whatever time, because it's happened before, that they were able to go to the store, go to the swap meet, and buy these images to put up in their house. So I think it's no different, but it's just a different context to see it, because it's that old school tradition and that old school, like, religious practice where you wake up in the morning to somebody outside your door preaching, or you wake up I'm rambling a little bit, but in the southern part of Ghana specifically, there is a more Christian dominance. So that's a part of everything. It's a part of the university system. It's a part of everything.
Great.
But it's like everything, and it's different in the northern part. The northern part is more Muslim. And even see that collide. You see so much in such a, like, Ghana is a fairly small country compared to, other countries. So you see all of those different dynamics at one time. And it's comical to me. It's so funny, because it's like, we're such a diverse people, regardless of our experiences, the outcomes of that has created for a diverse group of people. And Christianity started on the African continent at the same time. So there is some honor that folks can have towards that. And there is, for me, I had to get out of the perspective of everything is the white man's. Like, no, these folks, yes, Christianity was introduced as a tool to these specific people to colonize and conquer. But on the east side of the continent, that wasn't the case. So how we practice is how we practice, depending on our geographical location, where we come up. But it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. I think it's funny, and it's not just amusing, but it's like, okay, this is how people coordinate and live our lives. And I'm sure when you come here to the States, you see the same thing in the city. It's a church on every corner. You can hear people preaching and praising out the doors. Where you have oppressed people, you will see that strong connection to some sort of force to, like, make sense of what is happening in this worldly context.
Right on. Very good. That makes sense. Could any of you all see yourself?
I can't hear you. I'm gonna exit real quick and come back out.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Can any of you all see yourselves living in Africa?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
What would make you think you can live in Africa as opposed to going back, at some point?
What would make me think I could live there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like now, my plan is to go at least twice a year, and with the intent on living.
Oh, she's frozen.
She's
Oh,
frozen.
sorry about that. During retirement. So, I want to be bi-coastal, maybe 6 months a year there, 6 months here, or 6 months there, 2 months somewhere else. I just want to travel and live. But I definitely want a home. I definitely want a home either in Accra or the outskirts, or in Abuja. Not Lagos, but Abuja. Abuja, I could definitely live. And I also really love the Volta region. It's something real special about the Volta region. It's a little out of the way, but yeah, I love Accra. I thought I was a country girl, but I'm not. That was very evident to me on this last trip. But I could see myself living there, absolutely.
Actually, me and my sister-in-law, we're building a house up on the mountains, the Aburi Mountains.
Oh, Aburi!
So it's actually past Aburi, but it's almost finished. We've been working on it for several years.
What?
Kind of like you, sister. I can see myself not just full time, like totally over full time. But there will be a house there, and I will come and go. And once I retire, I'll be able to stay long periods of time, whether that be 6 months at a time or 3 months at a time. Let me say, I have to sign off, and it's been a pleasure spending a couple of hours this morning with you ladies, and I'll get your contact information.
Okay, please do.
And have a blessed day. Love you.
Thank you.
I'll go to your instant messenger. I emailed you. I sent you all instant messenger in the group. So
okay. Oh yes. It's there. Okay.
Thank you, Queen Mother. Thank
you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, Tia, we were saying, could you live in Africa, and if so, why?
Oh yeah, I could. My goal is within the next year to be able to spend half of the year on the continent, half of the year here in the States, mainly because our ancestors were like they were movers and shakers. I believe, the enslavement piece kind of held some people up, but other people were still moving around the whole continent and then the whole world. So I consider myself like a global citizen mainly.
That's right.
The continent being like a source of life, where it's not a place where I have to, if I had children there, my children wouldn't have to fight for things like just basic human rights, so recognizing the claim to that land and the continent, especially as I continue to do my own legacy work. I could live there, and I don't have a specific place. There's still so much of the continent I have left to travel. I've been to Ghana and Nigeria. That's not a lot. I would definitely want a home in Ghana, because that's where my introduction to the continent, in this lifetime has started. So I don't know where. It could be the city. I want a city place. The Volta region is beautiful, mentioning it. It is something special. I think is you have like, that fusion of Hausa people and tradition and culture. It's a little different from like the Ashanti dominance and presence that's in the rest of the country, I think. So, definitely I could live. I want to have a spot in each region, probably.
That's
of
right.
the continent. Yeah, all over.
I haven't been to Takoradi yet. Not Takoradi, Tamale.
Okay.
Tamale. That's in the north, right?
It's in the north. Definitely a place to go. They make the shea butter there, amongst other things. It's not too far from. Actually, there is not too far from Tamale. There is a permaculture institute. And there's a lot of farming up in that area as well. Similar to like Volta, they have the coconut farming and stuff. So the Permaculture Institute, the Ghana Permaculture Institute, is a fully sustainable living, it's just sustainable ran land, and they produce all type of stuff from moringa powder to mushrooms. They do a lot. So if you do get a chance to go, I would definitely recommend checking it out and how they recycle everything. You know, you can train there. There's an institute there for learning different permaculture practices. People from all over the world actually go there to learn from the practices that they've been able to develop.
Okay.
Well, ladies, thank you. This has been a really awesome 2 hours we did talking about Africa, from America to Africa. I thought what I'm really pleased about is that we had such different perspectives, which is beautiful, because sometimes when we talk about African people, we act like it's a monolith, and so yours is the experience. But we're so diverse. And I would hope that people took away from this that anybody can really go to Africa. Like, your experience is it's like being in America, your experience is your experience. So I thank you all so much for coming on, talking about your journey from Africa. And I think the beginning of your life is just as important as where you are right now, because that's your root. That's your root. So thank you, ladies, so much. I'm going to end the broadcast. Don't y'all hang up, but I'm going to end the broadcast. So family, I shall see you all next Sunday on Sunday Sitting with Sisters. We'll be joined with some more sisters sitting and talking about what's going on in our lives. Peace, family.
All right. Peace.